Gouache, a comprehensive guide to techniques, materials, best practices. Gouache, often described as opaque watercolor, is a versatile and forgiving medium celebrated for its matte finish, vibrant color, and ability to be reworked. This guide will provide a comprehensive overview of gouache, covering essential materials, fundamental techniques, advanced applications, and best practices for achieving stunning results. Understanding gouache definition. Gouache is a water-based paint composed of pigment, a binding agent, typically gum arabic, and an opacifying agent, such as chalk or other fillers. This opacifier distinguishes it from transparent watercolor and gives gouache its characteristic opacity. Key characteristics. Opacity. Gouache dries to a matte, opaque finish, allowing for the layering of light over dark and easy correction of mistakes. Reactivation. Gouache remains water-soluble even after drying, allowing for rework and blending. Color intensity. Gouache offers vibrant and intense colors, perfect for illustration, design, and fine art. Versatility. It can be used on a variety of surfaces and lends itself to diverse techniques. 2. Essential materials for gouache painting. 1. Gouache paints. Student grade versus artist grade. Student grade gouache is less expensive but contains lower concentrations of pigment and may have less vibrant colors. Artist grade gouache, on the other hand, offers richer colors, better light fastness, and smoother consistency. Brands like Holbein Acrylic Gouache, Windsor, Newton Designer's Gouache, M. Graham Gouache, and Schmink Horadam Gouache are highly recommended for professional results. Color palette selection. Start with a limited palette of primary colors: cadmium red light, cadmium yellow light, ultramarine blue, and black and white. You can then expand your palette to include secondary and tertiary colors as needed. Opacity assessment. Be aware that certain pigments are naturally more transparent than others, e.g. quinacridone colors. Check color charts for opacity ratings when purchasing. 2. Brushes. Synthetic versus natural. Both synthetic and natural brushes can be used with gouache. Synthetic brushes are more durable and easier to clean, while natural brushes, like sable or squirrel, can hold more water and pigment, offering smoother application. Look for brushes designed for watercolor, as these are generally suitable for gouache. Brush shapes and sizes. A variety of shapes and sizes is beneficial. Round brushes, versatile for detail work, washes, and lines. Flat brushes, ideal for covering large areas and creating sharp edges. Filbert brushes, good for blending and creating soft edges. Detail brushes, for very fine lines and intricate details. Brush care. Clean your brushes thoroughly after each use with warm water and mild soap. Reshape the bristles and allow them to dry horizontally to maintain their shape. 3. Papers and surfaces. Watercolor paper. Cold, pressed watercolor paper is a popular choice for gouache. Its textured surface provides good tooth for the paint to adhere to. Hot pressed paper offers a smoother surface, suitable for detailed work. Illustration board. A smooth, rigid surface that is ideal for illustration and design work. Gessoed boards, canvas. Primed boards and canvas can be used for a more traditional painting surface. Mixed media paper, suitable for experimenting and practicing techniques. Paperweight. Use a minimum of 104 300 grams paper to prevent buckling when applying water. 2. Palette. Palette with wells. A palette with wells is ideal for mixing colors and keeping them moist. Stay wet palette. These palettes have a sponge and absorbent paper layer that keeps the paint moist for extended periods. This is a great investment if you tend to take breaks during the painting process. Ceramic palette. Easy to clean and doesn't stain easily. 3. Water container. Use 2 containers of water, one for rinsing your brushes and one for diluting the paint. 4. Mixing tools. Palette knives or small spoons for transferring paint. 5. Other useful supplies. Masking tape or fluid for creating crisp edges and masking off areas. Spray bottle. for keeping the paint moist on the palette. Paper towels or cloths for cleaning brushes and spills. Pencils and erasers for sketching your composition. Ruler or T-square for precise lines and shapes. Fixative. Although not always necessary, a fixative can protect the finished painting from smudging. Varnish. For a protective layer to prevent damage and smudging, ensure it is meant for water-based paints to avoid activating the gouache. 3. Fondamental. Gouache technique. 1. Layering. Light over dark. Gouache's opacity allows you to layer light colors over dark colors. This technique is fundamental to creating depth and dimension. Building up values. Start with lighter washes and gradually build up to darker values. Allow drying time. Ensure each layer is completely dry before applying the next to avoid lifting previous layers. Using a hairdryer on a low, cool setting can speed up the drying process. 2. Blending. Wet, on, wet. Apply fresh paint to a still wet area to create soft, seamless blends. Dry brushing. Use a dry brush with a small amount of paint to create textured effects. Feathering. Use a soft brush to gently blend the edges of two colors together. 2. Washes. Creating a wash. Dilute the gouache paint with water to create a transparent wash. Apply the wash evenly across the paper using a large brush. Graded washes. Create a wash that gradually changes in value from light to dark by adding more water as you progress. 3. Dry brushing. Textural effects. Use a dry brush with a small amount of paint to create textured effects, such as the appearance of rough surfaces or foliage. Apply lightly. Apply the dry brush lightly to the paper to avoid applying too much paint. 4. Lifting and erasing. Reactivating dried paint. Since gouache is water-soluble, you can reactivate dried paint with a wet brush and lift it off the paper. Using a damp sponge. Use a damp sponge to gently lift paint from large areas. Precise corrections. Use a fine-tipped brush to make precise corrections. 5. Opacity control. Varying water ratios. Adjust the amount of water to control the paint's opacity. More water creates a more transparent wash, while less water creates a more opaque layer. Gare. Advanced gouache technique. 1. Scumbling. Dragging a relatively dry brush over the paper to create a broken, textured effect. This is particularly useful for depicting foliage, fur, or rough surfaces. 2. Sgraffito. Applying a layer of gouache and then scratching into it with a sharp tool, like a toothpick or needle, to reveal the underlying layer. 3. Glazing. Applying thin, transparent layers of color, glazes, over previous layers to create depth and luminosity. This is similar to watercolor glazing. 4. Underpainting. Creating an initial layer of paint, often in a monochrome or limited color palette, to establish values and composition before applying subsequent layers. 5. Mixed media. Combining gouache with other media, such as colored pencils, ink, watercolor, or pastel. 6. Masking. Using masking fluid or tape to protect areas of the paper from paint, allowing you to create sharp edges and complex compositions. V. Best practices. Tips for gouache painting. 1. Start with a sketch. Plan your composition with a light pencil sketch before applying the paint. This helps you establish the placement of elements and avoid mistakes. 2. Mix enough paint. Mix enough paint for each layer to avoid running out midway and having to recreate the color. 3. Test colors. Before applying paint to your painting, test the color on a scrap piece of paper to ensure it is what you want. 4. Work from light to dark. In general, it is best to work from light to dark values, as it is easier to layer dark colors over light colors. 5. Maintain a wet edge. When painting large areas, maintain a wet edge to avoid hard lines and uneven patches. 6. Clean your brushes regularly. Clean your brushes regularly to prevent the paint from drying and damaging the bristles. 7. Let layers dry completely. Allow each layer to dry completely before applying the next to prevent lifting or muddling. 8. Experiment. Don't be afraid to experiment with different techniques and approaches to find what works best for you. 9. Embrace mistakes. Gouache is a forgiving medium. Don't be afraid to make mistakes and learn from them. 6. Conclusion. Gouache is an incredibly rewarding medium that offers a unique combination of characteristics. By understanding the materials, mastering essential techniques, and practicing consistently, you can unlock the full potential of gouache and create stunning works of art. Don't be afraid to experiment, explore, and develop your own unique style. Happy painting!